Welcome back. Meta is the latest Silicon Valley company to require employees to come back to the office 3 days a week effective after Labor Day. Facebook's parent company says this will improve collaboration and innovation. But some leadership experts warn such corporate policy changes may actually hurt the company. Anchor Kristen Z spoke to Dr. Heidi Gardner, a distinguished fellow at Harvard Law School and author of 2 best-selling books on collaboration.
One of the potential pitfalls of changing and backtracking on a policy is doing it without a clear explanation for why the change is absolutely necessary, and not only how it will benefit the company, but how it actually might be better for the employees themselves. I wasn't hearing a lot of that in the recent policy changes at Meta, and frankly, I didn't hear that from a lot of the big giants in Silicon Valley. Employees want to know that they're not just a number or a resource. They want to be treated like a human, and they feel they have a right to be explained to why this kind of policy change that affects them deeply is actually in their own best interest.
And you also said, minus that explanation, that communication, it could really hurt the trust between employees and management. Talk about that.
Well, we all like to believe that we can count on somebody to keep their word. Now, naturally, conditions change, the economy changes, and leaders do have a right, of course, to backtrack on a policy. And yet the way they go about communicating it matters a lot. If it looks like they are doing this on a whim, or if it looks like they're not being empathetic, it really can destroy people's ability to hold them to their word or believe that they're going to carry through next time around.
Right. I mean, on social forums, I'm seeing some employees complain of whiplash. What does that mean here, and how does this affect employees' view of the company, right? In I guess in Meta's case, they're talking about how, early in 2021, they said, let's go hybrid or remote. And then in June, it announced kind of a hybrid, and now this update. So what does whiplash mean here, and what is the impact?
Well, the impact could be pretty significant for some people if they really believed that they were going to have the right for a long time to keep a different kind of schedule. Maybe they made some very different lifestyle changes. They sold a second car, they changed some of their childcare options. All of those sorts of things are profound for people who are juggling multiple different kinds of priorities, not just work. And so when a leader backtracks on what that policy looks like, it's not surprising that people do feel this kind of whiplash. We were promised one thing and now you're changing your mind.
And I wonder,
again, a leader who exhibits a lot of empathy and at least acknowledges that there's some pain associated with it can go further in helping to regenerate some of the trust that they've lost.
So give us some examples of how an employer could demonstrate more empathy and address some of the employees' real, I guess, the sacrifices, if you will.
Well, first of all, I think it's getting to know what those sacrifices really are. And some people have preferences to work at home. Some people have real needs to work at home or work remotely. And I think when you create a blanket policy, it doesn't leave very much room for the human customization and personalization that could be necessary for some people. But even if you accept that, most people will do better in an office environment, explaining why, simply making a blanket statement that you must come back is not nearly as powerful or appealing to people as helping them understand what did they get out of being in the office. So as an expert myself on what I call smarter collaboration, I know for a fact that in-person collaboration can have real benefits. I don't think these leaders are misguided in suggesting that being back in the office is beneficial, but they haven't explained how those individuals benefit. Maybe it's better coaching and development opportunities. Maybe it's more fun. Maybe it's better social connections. But right now it's a mandate rather than a magnet. And we want to see leaders drawing people back in, not forcing them.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. And I wonder if employees tend to view it a certain way or frame it as a negative if it comes on the heels of massive layoffs like they had.
Well, you do have a situation where there's already a loss of trust in leadership. People are naturally scared and they're wondering what's going to come next. Human minds don't cope all that well with uncertainty, especially when it's uncertainty about my own future. So you already have a workforce that's on edge, and piling this on top of it just makes that all the more difficult to swallow.
Okay, so then what advice would you give to companies that are about to make some pretty big changes? Would you kind of baby step it, scaffold it, or would you just come out and say it? What would you do?
I think people want to be treated like grown-ups, right? So what they don't want is a series of changes where they start to feel manipulated. So if you know that you're headed back to a policy of 3 days in the office, explain that's where you're headed and try as best as you can to make it a balanced message. Again, explain to people what's in it for them. Can they expect to see their leaders in the office those times? I mean, that is something that feels deeply unfair, is when people of a certain level are expected to come back in and their own bosses don't show up, right? So people want to know that they're held to the same standard as their peers. They want to understand that their bosses as well will be held to these kinds of standards. And they want to understand what they'll get by being back in the office, whether that's better mentoring, whether that is opportunities to observe and get more professional development. There are lots of ways that leaders can couch these kinds of decisions so that people understand why the decision's been made, and then that they can actually count on this for the foreseeable future.
That does it for us tonight. I'm Karina Nova. Thanks for watching. ABC 7 News streaming at 5:30.